Good morning and welcome to Blain's Morning Porridge. This is part one of a two-porridge morning. It's February 9th, 2026. This morning, fire horses, UK bond risk, conflict risk, and Emperor's new clothes risk. And let's start off with a great quote from the weekend. Knuckles to buckles. The threat board is looking crowded this morning. From UK political risk, escalating conflict risks, a possible credit burp, and what happens next in unsustainable narratives. Who knows what further No-See-Ums lurk in the background? Yet, markets party on. What can possibly go wrong? Anyway, as I said, this is part one of the Morning Porridge. I'm hoping to write a piece later this morning, a mid-market morning comment on Bitcoin, and I'll follow with that if I get time to finish it today. But to start off with this morning, we have to begin with the Winter Olympics. The TV has been tuned to Milan Cervino 24/7 in the Blain household over the weekend. Curling is simply fascinating. Who knew it was so tactical and interesting? Big air snowboarding has been just stunning, and the scoring is fantastic. The little Japanese fellow looked a lot better dancing on ice than the American's backflip. And the downhill skiing has been, well, scary. Now, she who is Mrs. Blain, my darling wife, broke her leg and ripped her knee ligaments in a shocking sailing accident last August. It necessitated a complete knee reconstruction, so it's no wonder that she started screaming as she watched US skier Lindsey Vonn take a terrible fall at the top of the women's downhill. Now, whether it was sensible for Vonn to be competing with a torn ACL is not the point. Competing is the point. And who would not have wanted her to get her shot at a fairy tale finish to her skiing career? Great respect to her for trying, and fantastic work on everyone getting her off the hill. Meanwhile, nothing highlights national pride and passion more than Six Nations rugby. Scotland lost the water polo in Rome's drenching rain at the weekend, utterly failing in the line-out and demonstrating our unsurpassable ability to snatch defeat from what could have been victory. But the Azzurri are getting better and better every year, and they deserve it, highlighting that nothing ever stays the same. Now, she who is Mrs. Blain is Welsh and suffered terribly as the English murdered them on Saturday. We will seek revenge for our Celtic cousins next week against the Sice in Edinburgh, but I think we pretty much know how this year's Six Nations Championship is going to play out. The Azzurri will probably come in fourth, Scotland will be fifth, and the Welsh will get the wooden spoon. The big one will be France versus England in Paris on March 14th, and I've got money on blue to win. Anyway, back to the markets, which is what you read the Morning Porridge for. We have an interesting week's play ahead. Now, typically, I have a list of 5 things to worry about on my chalkboard, imminent risks that may occur to wobble or derail global or local markets. This morning, 5 things caused me to wake up early, and these ranged from political risk in bonds, conflict risk, inflation monetary risk, the credit burp that I talked about earlier, and what I'm going to call Emperor's new clothes risk, which I'll describe fully later. All of these are already in motion. But let's step back a moment and look at markets from a very different perspective. Next week, February 17th, sees the start of the Chinese New Year, and this year is going to be the year of the fire horse, a sign that is typically associated with volatility, conclusions, and swift change. Now, the 12 animals of the Chinese zodiac interact with the 5 elements, that's wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, which means that each animal and element occurs together every 60 years. Now, 60 years is interesting because that's roughly in line with the widely accepted Western economic concept of the 60-year-old long-term Kondratiev cycle. More significantly, we're in a period of the 2K, that's two Kondratiev cycles of hegemonic change, as China and the USA challenge each other. Now, historically, you get this period of hegemonic change every 120 years, every two Kondratiev cycles, and these are often periods of increasing conflict risk. Now, according to one of my Chinese chums who we had dinner with on Friday night, the coming firehorse year means elevated risks of dramatic and sudden shifts in terms of war, rebellion, natural disasters, and particularly fire. Now, 1666 was a firehorse year, and it saw both London and Edo, the capital of Japan, burnt to the ground. Already Australia and California are braced for wildfires this year, and apparently a critical date will be March the 3rd, when a total lunar eclipse will see a bloodworm moon turn red, heralding, well, who knows what. Now, markets today have enough on their plate already and probably won't be paying much attention to Chinese mythology, yet the firehorse risks neatly encapsulate the current divisions and vulnerabilities of the West to external conflicts, threats, and from being undermined from within by fake news, political destabilization, grift, corruption, and the apparent roll towards autocracy versus democracy, which could threaten civil unrest across the West. It may be happening in the States already, and populism in Europe means it's here as well. So let's start with just one of the threats on my chalkboard this morning: political risk in the UK. Now, everyone was saying that Japan was the canary in the coal mine for the global bond markets because of its rising yields and the quantum of Japan's debt. Yet, Sani Takaishi won a supermajority win last night to hold the Japanese premiership by dint of her confidence and her credibility. The stock market is on a roll in Japan, and yes, she still faces massive issues in trying to shake up the aging, moribund Japanese economy to play to its still full potential, but the noises all sound right. What if the harbinger for global bond market conflict is going to be the UK? It shouldn't be. The UK's gilt market is in technically strong shape, with a decent debt maturity structure, the professionalism of the Debt Management Office managing the programme, solid international and domestic demand for gilts, and an economy that's okay rather than brilliant. The UK's debt to GDP is better than most other nations, except for Germany, yet the UK is again challenging France for sheer political dumb fuck beep-ery. The strategists and media manipulators backing Nigel Farage's reform will be high-fiving themselves this week for destabilising the nation. It now looks increasingly likely Sir Keir Starmer will be tumbled as the UK's Prime Minister. Moscow will be absolutely delighted. A Starmer exit could spin the global bond dials as investors fret about what might follow. Now, Starmer's longevity as leader has been fatally undermined by the Mandelson affair, a No-See-Ums event that sums up the dither since Starmer's election win 20 months ago. His credibility after appointing Mandy as his Trump whisperer in Washington has been roasted. Mandelson's long-term political graft and mendacity has been exposed to be of the highest order. Starmer's chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, has fallen on his sword. The good news is the UK is being seen to work. Mandelson has been exposed and he will be tried for it. Yet justice being seen to be done won't count for much if Starmer's political fall triggers a collapse in perceptions of the UK's political competency, which feels increasingly inevitable. The bad news is a weakened UK and a possible bond market wobble on what might come next could not come at a worse time for the UK and Europe. Now, I have a very simple model for thinking about the market consequences of politics. I call it the virtuous sovereign trinity. It posits that any nation with a stable currency, a sustainable bond market, and political competency will be broadly okay. Now, we saw the consequences of breaching these when the political incompetency of Liz Truss nearly broke the gilts market in 2022, and way back in 1992 when US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, then working for George Soros, broke sterling, plunging the Labour Party into a repeat of the Game of Thrones that saw multiple increasingly ineffective Tory leaders over the course of the last 8 years in power will not help the UK. And to see the effect, watch gilts and sterling. Sterling's already under pressure. The risk is Labour replaces the helpless and hapless Starmer with something worse, harking back to the black hole of political common sense and ability that was Jeremy Corbyn. Even I wouldn't vote for Jeremy Corbyn. The thing is, Starmer has no one to blame but himself. Now, he's not a bad person, but his political chops have proved him a disappointing Prime Minister. The thing is, no politician can overcome their personality. Lawyers don't lead, they make and solve problems. And Starmer thinks too much and did too little, failing to present the UK with any discernible vision or roadmap back to growth and relevance. None of the big issues that we identified before the election have been addressed: growth, housing, defence, or reforming the NHS before it devours us all. Confidence was required. Instead, we got negativity about the budget, and Treasury says no to solutions. Starmer now has the look of a rabbit caught in the headlights. He's failed to lead his cabinet or his party, and the backbenchers smell weakness, the only thing he abounds in. He's overseen some bad decisions that have adversely impacted businesses and the economy, and he's allowed the opposition to dominate the narrative and repeatedly spin his policies against him. After 14 years in opposition preparing to govern, Labour has failed to govern effectively. And what will follow? There is no obvious Labour successor or leader with the talent or personality needed to present and lead the nation towards a new vision and a plan for growth. We will end up with more middling types who think they can lead, or maybe a firebrand who will Corbynize the party to put together gender and welfare politics that are ahead of repairing broken and defenceless Britain. The dark forces of the right wing and their blitzkrieg approach to successfully undermining every utterances of Starmer's ill-fated government will make a populist reform government inevitable, and that's unlikely to impress global gilt investors. It will not impress me, and I know that many of the smarter minds on gilts desks feel the same way. The Treasury, the Bank of England, and the Debt Management Office can only keep the market stable for so long if it all goes to hell in a new Corbynite handbasket. I suspect I'm going to be writing a lot about gilts in the coming weeks, which leads me to my second issue this morning: political change and conflict. Now, some readers criticise me for the amount of time and attention I pay to geopolitics and politics. They are very different things. I do so because markets tend to react to rather than anticipate political changes, which can occur with frightening speed. I mean, who would have believed the USA could change so much in the space of 12 months? Love him or loathe him, Trump has Trump has upended the current global systems of alliances, while the themes stirred up around him, including Epstein, ICE, and the politics of his terrible swift sword of retribution, trigger new and potentially destabilizing themes in domestic politics. Thus far, though, markets have not really reacted to the impact of Trump. They blithely assume the system will tend to stay the same and the world doesn't suddenly upend itself and become something completely different. But the thing is, it has. Traders and investors are stunned by Trump, but they're making the mistake that he's just background noise, and his unpredictability, venality, inexcusable disrespect, and taco rollbacks mean it's just the new normal and can all be discounted. That, I reckon, is a mistake. We are no longer in a same as world any longer. So wake up and smell the coffee. The consequences of Trump will be long-term and have a massive long-term economic consequence. And Trump is not the only factor. He's but a symptom of a far wider change of agenda that involves technologies, economies, nations, and leaders. These concerns are not eased by Chinese mythology and the coming fire horse year, and it's a warning about increased volatility. Now, later this week, I'm going to be up at Edinburgh lecturing on the rising risks to the global consensus, where I teach at the Edinburgh Business School, and giving a lunchtime outlook at the Library of Mistakes in Edinburgh on Friday. Now, I'll try and post them both because they'll be dealing with this on the Morning Porridge website. But the unpreparedness of Europe and the other middle powers, which I'm now taking to calling J-cake, that's Japan, Canada, Australasia, Korea, and Europe, to defend themselves in the new global reality, and the rupture, not transition, as Mark Carney said, with the USA, leave our economies massively vulnerable. And I'm now spending most of my time in the real world, that's at Windshift Capital and in private capital markets, raising capital for the new Spitfire Strategic Capital Fund. Let me give you a very quick description of Spitfire. Check out the website, spitfirestrategiccapital.com, and email me for a fuller chat. Spitfire Strategic Capital is a hybrid venture capital private equity fund investing in defense. It's going to focus on war-winning defense platforms to the middle nation democracies to swiftly re-establish strategic deterrence following the USA's strategic repositioning towards its own hemisphere. The fund's partners bring a strong track record in PE delivery and a powerful investment thesis based on understanding of how quickly conflict is evolving. They are supported by an advisory board of former senior military commanders, intelligence chiefs, and diplomats, together with boots-on-the-ground technical advisors in flashpoints and conflict zones. Spitfire will be investing in innovative, adaptive, deliverable, lethal weapon platforms that will allow nations to swiftly re-establish full-spectrum deterrence on land, sea, sky, space, and the cyberverse. Now, my take on investing in defense is really quite simple. If we don't defend ourselves, then other investments won't be worth anything. A quick final comment. I referred earlier to Emperor's New Clothes risk. That's the risk we all suddenly wake up from the current asset bubble of the current markets with a cold dunk of reality, when we realise much of what we currently accept as gospel truths are utter bunkum. An example might be Elon Musk. He's on course to be a trillionaire building robo-taxis that barely work, robots we don't need nor can afford, while telling us he's going to put data centers in space sometime in the next 2 years, which is utterly impossible when no one yet has designed a cooling mechanism for them. Computing systems hardened against solar and cosmic radiation don't exist, and his Starship rocket simply doesn't work and can't deliver them into geosynchronous orbits. May's mission to the moon for NASA will go up on a NASA rocket, not a Starship. And if folks start asking Musk difficult questions about delivery, rather than simply accepting his fantabulations, which has fueled his current wealth, then the risks to a successful SpaceX IPO later this year start to rise. Just saying, it could be the straw that breaks the camel's backs. Anyway, sorry for this slightly longer than usual morning porridge, and I'll be back later today with something else if I get the time. You can find the morning porridge on www.morningporridge.com, and every day if you sign up, you'll get it delivered fresh to your inbox. Anyway, thank you all very much for your time. I'll be back again later, and much more to talk about this week, I expect.